Okay, well, I've heard this wonderful God you've all been speaking about, and this was a God that I hated. You couldn't believe, as a little boy, how much I hated people like you, ministers, churches, elders, anything like it. And the principal reason was my father was a bully, a drunk, a gambler, and he hit my mother. And Saturday nights, my brothers and I lay in bed weeping alongside the weeping that my mother was doing. We knew the difference between a punch and a slap. And he was sat the next morning in the church. I know it wasn't the fear of God that had him, there was probably fear of my granny, because I was scared of her as well. But this was what I thought. You could do things like this and go to church, but it wasn't what they taught me. Then they sent me to Sunday school. And guess what they told me? You've got another father. And I thought, no. And this one was even worse than the one I had, because this one was invisible and lived up above the clouds. And I was a burgeoning angler when I was 7 or 8. And this one could turn the water into blood and kill all the trout and salmon. I couldn't believe it. And he killed people with horses and armies. So, wow, he's worse than the one I've got. And it really troubled me. And I had a younger brother who took to screaming in the middle of the night. We all shared, my bigger brother and I shared a large bed, and the older brother was in a small bed, all in the one room. And the screaming was because he had developed a type of tumour in his brain, which they did try to operate on. I found out when I was an adult it was inoperable, but they tried. And Ivor was his name, and he died. I was playing one day, and somebody shouted to me, "Finlay, Ivor's dead." And I thought, well, that's can't. How do you know? I didn't believe it. In spite of my mother weeping and all that, I didn't believe this dead thing. And I thought, the minute the door creaked, and we were all in the house, and the door creaked in the wind or something, I looked up thinking Ivor was coming in. However, he never did, and then suddenly there was a white box in my mother's room, painted with gold lines, and I was told I had to look in this box, because Ivor was in it, and I didn't believe that either. And when I looked in the box, there was 2 cloths, one over the body and one over the head. And I knew he had had something done to his brain. And when I looked in this box, I rushed back out because I thought he'd cut the head off to do the work in the brain. And I just got frightened my life. And 2 days after that, we went down to the cemetery, which was beside my grandmother's house. And there was a hole in the ground, and they put a little box in the hole in the ground, and they covered it with dirt. And I thought, I did feel that something was finished. I did feel that was the finish of something. But 2 days later, the minister came to the house. I hated ministers in the same way, all the same they were. And he came, and I said, "Oh, I'll get my mother for you, Mr. Ross." He said, "No, Finlay, it's you I've come for." I thought, he knows what I've done. And what I had done was, going to Sunday school, I've been taught in this Sunday school that God had everything. It's been said already. He was the creator of everything, all the gold and silver and stuff. And I had 2 halfpences. One for the church and one for the Sunday school. And I thought, what does he need with my 2 halfpences? What on earth good are they to Sunday school? I thought, that's what my mother would say, that's greed, not need. So I decided, as not many of you old enough to remember, there was a time when a halfpence sometimes had a little ship on the obverse side of it. It was actually a tea clipper, and they were beautiful little coins. And I thought, if I ever get one of them, I'm going to steal it. So I looked at my 2 coins, and yes, one had the tea clipper on it. And I'm going down to the church thinking, where can I put it? And I thought, I can't take them home, because if I've got a collection of halfpences, my mother will know, because I never had any money. Neither did she. My father never gave us money. But as I walked down to church, there was a hotel called the Poplars Hotel in Pitlochry, where I was brought up, and it's still there. I saw it a fortnight ago. The wall looked high to me, but it's actually just down there. And the wall's still there. And I found this wall was very badly damaged, and there was little holes in the pointing. And I put my finger in and found a flat bit. And I thought, there's my bank. I'll put my halfpenny in there. And I wasn't stupid. You see, there was a tree like that. Came over the top of the wall, so I hid under the tree and did it so God wouldn't see me. Told you I wasn't stupid. And I don't know what I was saving up for a Rolls Royce or something. A couple of months later, there were 4 or 5 of these halfpences stolen. And I got great good news at school. That it was after the war, after the rationing, and the tuck shop had reopened, it had sweeties. That's confectionery for those that are not Scots. And I went down to get my sweeties. Well, down this road. As I turned the corner, something looked different. The entire wall had been repaired and repointed. And a clue where my pennies went. I thought, that's that God, he's pinched them back. And I thought, this is just so awful. What a life I have. I'm trying to hurry through this just a little bit. And again, I had a visit after this thing that happened where the box went in the hole in the ground, where the minister came to the house, and he said it wasn't my mummy who wanted it, was me. And I thought, he knows about the half pennies, God stole them, they're all the same, they're against me. And I said, what do you want? Me? And he said, yes. Do you know something, Finlay? Ivan was a good little boy. Now that is true, he was quiet and calm compared with the rest of us. And he was, I think he was, actually my brothers and I now believe he was delicate from birth. And he was a good little boy. And the minister said, see what happens if you're really good and you're a very, very good little boy, God takes you home to be with him in heaven early and you can be with Jesus. And I thought, I'm not doing it, is that? And he said, that's what he said you got as a reward for being good. And after he went away, I thought, the reward for being good is you get something in your head, makes you scream in the night, then they cut your head off and do something in your brain, and stick you in a hole in the ground and cover you with earth. And that's the reward for being good. And that was my excuse for never being good. And after that, I got worse and worse. What I did most of the time, I was born deformed, with a head on one side and a pigeon chest and asthma, but that all got better through miraculously. I don't know how. Some people said because of the care my mother took of me. I used the asthma as a tool not to bother going to school. Well, not English and maths, everything else was okay. I was always sick in English and maths. But I wanted to go away from home, but how could you, 15? How could I get away out of Pitlochry, away in the hills of Scotland? And then a man came to the school, he was a youth employment officer, and he spoke about joining up the RAF. And I thought, oh yeah, flying a plane, that's for me. And you could go 15 and a half, but how could I get the paperwork signed? And I took upon myself to go lying through the town. And the local justice of the peace was my father's cousin, so I went to him and I told him I had my father's permission, and he said, do you have an asthma now anymore? So I lied about that. I said, no, I don't. Oh, well, finally, it's lovely to go and fight for your country, son. There you go. And in the interval, I had been abused at about 14 by the village policeman. Sexually abused by the village policeman. He ran the Rover Scouts, and they also had fancy patrols, visits going to church. So he was another churchman. And I believe church people could treat you any way they liked. And just that was it. He was just another of this terrible lot of people. So I got this signature from Justice of the Peace. I went to my grandpa's bank. I'd never been in it. I'd never been in a bank in my life. And he thought it was quite funny, this little boy's coming looking for a signature to run away to the RAF. I didn't say I was running away. I told him I had my father's permission. And he signed it. But it's in the next one that said, a police officer. There's no way was I going to go to the police to ask for the signature, because I knew what it was going to cost me to go there. But I thought there must be somebody else who's got a uniform. And there's a man with a peaked cap. And it was the station master at the local station. So I went and lied a whole lot of rubbish to him, and he signed it. So I had everything except a parental signature. And my mother said, you're not going anywhere near Wolverhampton, pal. I thought, what's wrong with Wolverhampton? Something wrong with Wolverhampton. She didn't want me to go there. And she said, they won't have you, you've got asthma. I said, they don't know that. What do you mean they don't know it? I said, well, it says perfectly healthy paperwork that she was supposed to have filled in. And she said I wouldn't. Again, I got my father in a sort of, not a mellow mood. He never ever spoke to my brothers and I, but he maybe had a little drink, and he signed the papers and thought it was wonderful. It's wonderful, get rid of me, I think. And away I went to Wolverhampton. Hated it. Absolutely hated it. The food was rubbish. They never called me by my name. They called me a jock. They called me a something jock, which was worse. They shouted at me. I shouted back and got into trouble. I'd just never been anywhere like that. And the food was revolting. My mother was a good cook. I don't actually remember how I managed to steal pairs, but I managed to steal. I tied the bottom of trousers and I filled the trousers up with these pairs. I pretended to be a boxer running out of this camp, you know, and I must have stolen the pairs. I went back to my barracks and they were just tiny little things, but they were better than the food they gave me. And I realised I couldn't eat them because I couldn't take them into the barracks and eat. So I went behind the barrack, I started to eat them quickly. I ate a whole leg full of these little things until they were beginning to feel just pretty awful and tasty. And I had to let the others go. Went to my bed, and a couple of hours later I had to go to the toilet. I'm getting up out of the toilet and I had to go back to the toilet. This happened 4 or 5 times and I was stuck there. And I was beginning to get fright. I was just only 15. I didn't know it was the unripe pears. And I started shouting for help. And they got 2 medics came and said, oh, not dysentery, oh. And they isolated me. And the doctor came and saw me. And he said, it's okay, we've done tests, you haven't got dysentery. We're taking you to the hospital. You haven't got dysentery. He said, what do you think of that? I said, oh, the hospital's great, I hate this. He said, so do I. He said, you see, I'm a national service doctor. He says, you do 2 years national service, but as a young doctor, they're always looking for a doctor. You can sign on for 3 years, he said, and you get very good experience before I try and go and get a proper job. He said, I hate this, saluting and marching up and down. I said, so do I. I said, say you've got a pain there, right there. Oh, he said, you've got a pigeon chest. I said, yes. No, we can't use that. I said, no, just put your finger under that lump and say, I've got a pain there. And after every meal, tell them. And this is a lying job, oh, I was good at that. And they came and they prodded me. Oh yeah, oh, stop it. And next thing I knew, I was in an ambulance going to London, to a hospital in London, Westminster, or something it's called. And I saw the 3rd surgeon to the Queen. And he said to me, he said, there's nothing wrong with you. He said, there's something funny in your mouth. Have you had your tonsils and adenoids out? I said, yes. So he looked again and he said, who did it? I said, family doctor. He said, did you use a knife and fork? I said, why? He's removed so much tissue, he said. And I'm thinking, oh no, here we go, this God's in this. And then they got fed up with me and they discharged me. And they said, give me a discharge papers. And I looked at it and I thought, well, that's not too bad. An honest, trustworthy boy, that's what it said. Fit for any civil employment, but not for services employment. Go home to your mum, son. So I was home, Mommy, here we go. And that was wonderful. 2 days later, there was a knock on the door. Guess who? The minister. Came to the door. I said, oh, it's Mum and you want? No, it's you, he said. I thought, oh, no, still on about these halfpennies. And it wasn't anything, do you have pennies? He said, I was a chaplain during the war, Finlay, he said, and you should have a pension. I said, I don't want a pension. He said, you should have a pension. I said, all people have pensions. I'll never get a job with a pension. He says, you're entitled to a pension, you're going to have a pension. Well, he didn't argue. You argued in your sleep, yeah, you're by yourself at night, but not with the minister. And I got a pension. I got a war pension. 16 I was, a war pension. I didn't remember any war in Wolverhampton, but I had a pension. So I must have missed this war, you know, but boy. I didn't smoke or drink or anything in those days, but later on it was a good source of cigarettes for me. I will come back to this. I've just written it down here in a way that, I'm sorry about this, I'm just trying to remember this. Once I got this, I got a job as a sheriff officer, which is like a high bailiff here, but it's a little more authority than that. And I met a beautiful lady and I did the first clever thing in my entire life, asked her to marry me. She only had one flaw, she went to church. But apart from that, she was perfect. And we had 2 little girls and they were wonderful. My wife took me to Sunday school and I didn't like that very much, I have to confess, but nonetheless that's the way it was. And then my mother-in-law died, and there was a big fuss. My wife's dad had been killed during the war and she hadn't known him. And when her mother died, who lived in a council house and had looked after the ancient granny and a disabled aunt, they had a great squabble about her things. In Scotland, things are very important. And she had 5 aunts who all wanted their share. My wife wanted none of it, as far as I could see, but she had some private little things of her mother's. I took her through to Dundee to confront these aunts, and I could hear my wife from my car screaming, And I'd never heard that before. I'd never heard the voice raised. And so I went rushing into the house, and as I was going in, she was got used to it. She said, "You, out. I've got to knock heads together." I said, "No, you go out in the car, get me home." So an hour and a half, she never spoke to me, never said a word. Get out of the car, she said. I have to confess, when I was married first, I wasn't the greatest husband, because I knew how husbands behaved because I'd seen my father. So I knew how I didn't hit her like. I tried it once, but it wasn't a good idea. I lost. but it was one of these things that I just. Anyway, she said, "I trust you and my two daughters and nobody else," and she changed. And she was kind of shrewish, and she wasn't a happy-go-lucky. She was a beautiful girl, and she was a wonderful ballroom dancer. And she didn't even want to do that anymore. Terrible. And I thought, I got a great arrogance, and in my arrogance I thought, I know what she needs. She needs to speak to a minister. But I didn't know any. There was a minister in the Abbey Church in Dunfermline. It's the biggest church nearby. I thought, if I could get him, he'll be good. Because my daughter played in the school band there, played clarinet, and she'd been in the Abbey, and I'd seen this little man. So I found out where he was, and I phoned him, and I asked him to come and see my wife. I told him roughly the circumstances. He said, "I'd be delighted to." And he said, "Did she ask me specifically?" I said, "She doesn't know anything about it." He said, "I can't come and speak to your wife if she doesn't know." I said, "Okay, well, I'll ask her." I still wasn't a Christian, so I still told lies. And she said, so I said, "I was speaking to Stuart McPherson, and he said he would like to come and speak to you. What do you think?" She said, "Love it." So Stuart came to the house, came to the door, and did his minister bit. He said to me, "Why is it I think it's you I'm here for?" I thought, "Because you're an idiot minister, that's why you think that." I didn't say anything. That's just a minister, numpty, as we'd say in Scotland. Was here for me? And that was totally unacceptable to me. Anyway, took him into the house, and I said, "We're going in there, that's the lounge through that glass panel door there." He said, "No, you go make the coffee and I'll go in and speak to your wife." I said, "I'm a minister, 2 minutes in my house and he's ordering me about." Anyway, I was worried about this because I was worried what this mumbo jumbo was going to be, going to jump up and down like what Maasai warriors or something. I had no idea what they were going to do, but I wanted to see it. And a very smart man called Stuart, who's sitting just over here, when I told this story for Vimeo, said to me, "Yes, they might even be speaking about you." I'd forgotten that, but he was right. That was another thing that was worrying me. She might have been speaking about me. So I had to make the coffee. I made it. He got rotten coffee, that poor miss. He got instant coffee, just like that. And I went and opened the door and I said, "Coffee?" And he said, "Yes, come in, we're finished." I thought, for goodness sake, I've missed the mumbo jumbo. In I went with the coffee, and I took one look at my wife, and I knew she was changed back. She smiled at me. She was in her own seat, and she was lovely, and I thought, "Oh gosh, I've got her back." So I got the coffee sorted, and then Stuart's drinking his coffee, and I said, "Stuart, it's getting late." He said, "It's only the back of 8. I said, "Yeah, but look, it's getting dark outside." He said, "I'm a big boy, I'm allowed out in the dark." But I think he got the message that I wanted him to go, and he went. And I said, "Mama, what did he do? What did he do? What was the mumbo jumbo?" She said, "You wouldn't be interested." I said, I'm very interested, honestly. What was the mumbo jumbo? Did he do anything? She says, "No, it's just a little bit out of the Bible. You wouldn't be interested." I said, "A little bit out of the Bible?" Goodness gracious me. I said, "Okay, go on, hit me. What was it?" And, well, it was Matthew 9 and 5, or even 5 and 9, I don't quite remember at the moment. And I said, "What's that?" She said, "It's called the Beatitudes. Some people call it the Sermon on the Mount. But it was just a little bit." I said, "Oh, Matthew." I said, "We don't have a Bible, do we?" She said, "Everybody else in this house has got a Bible except you. The girls have got Bibles, I've got a Bible. My Bible's through in the bedroom. The top drawer, I went and got it. And I looked, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. I came to Matthew eventually. I read this. And it said, "Blessed are the peacemakers." Although what she said to me was, "Blessed is the peacemaker," which is what obviously she was saying. That's what I read was, "Blessed are the peacemakers." 4 words. I said, "That's rubbish. That is absolute rubbish. Blessed is the peacemaker." And she said, "Well, it's Jesus' words, it's important to me." So I took this Bible and I threw it on the settee. I can see myself doing it. Landed whack. Well, that's you sorted, pal. But I couldn't throw it out of my heart. And I couldn't get away from the feeling that these 4 words were so powerful.
Yeah.
Just couldn't believe it. And a few days passed, and I found myself, to my absolute astonishment, saying to her, "Sweetheart, would you like to go to church on Sunday?" And she said, "I'll go if you'll go." Well, I was so pleased that she was changed. I mean, I was really so pleased. I decided I would go. And I picked this big church again. Because it was the biggest one. I thought that's about to be the best. It was actually about the worst, but I didn't know that at that time. I went to this church, and they were very excited about me for some reason that I didn't quite know, because I didn't do anything. I didn't really understand. And I was home one day, and I was thinking, I knew I was losing my business, and I was losing, I can't read that. I was losing my business. I was going to lose my house, which I built myself. It's a bungalow in the country. 3 of us built 3 of these houses. And I was worried I was going to lose Rome and the girls. That was really what I didn't want to lose. But I was sure if I lost one, I'd lose a lot. And I really wasn't sure what to do. I was sitting feeling sorry for myself one morning in my wonderful house I had built all by ourselves. And I started to cry. I'd been a sheriff officer and stuff early on. I was even in the RAF, for goodness sake. And for a year and 159 days. And I found myself lying on the floor crying. And I don't mean just a little bit, I was weeping. And I was stuck to the floor. I couldn't move. I was petrified. Because the windows went right down to the floor. And it was about the time the postman would come round. And here's me lying crying. I was going to like a big lassie. You know what that is, don't you? And I couldn't move. And I was thinking, what am I doing here? And I heard a voice, and I really was worried then. I thought, I'm losing everything, and I'm also losing my mind. And this voice was saying just nice things, and suddenly I think, this is a God thing. And I was frightened of it at first. And then I got peace from this voice. And the voice and I started to remember things. I even confessed about the half pennies. I said, I'm sorry, God, about the half pennies. And the voice is saying, you don't worry about that. Forget these things. God has forgotten it. And I got this again and again. I remembered all the time I hit somebody and I did this and I did that. God has forgotten it. And it just started to feel good. And I was no sort of a singer or anything. I found myself lying there in the midst of my tears singing a song. A little song I'd learned in. I went to the Baptist Bible class for 3 weeks in the running because they got a cup of tea and a biscuit at it. But I got fed up with the biscuit after a while. There was really chocolate biscuits, so I stopped going. I remember this little song, and I'm lying crying and singing, and I suddenly realised that why Jesus was born the way he was, why he lived, why he died, and why he rose again. And I knew this absolutely accurately. Sadly, it meant I thought I knew it all. But I knew that accurately. And I thought, what do I do now? Well, the singing was better because I could crawl, because I'd started to laugh. And I could crawl out the lounge away from this window, and I was laughing. And I laughed, I'm talking hours. And it was wonderful. It was wonderful. Now, I have to say, I've never actually looked back from that time. I'm just trying to cut this a bit short because I want to get teeps up again. After that, I met a man. I went to this church and they didn't like me because they said I talked too much about Jesus. And I was a new convert, of course, and I thought it was all wonderful. They didn't like me at all. I had a habit of clapping my hands and giving it this music. They didn't like that either. So I left because I lost my house. And I met a man I knew, an accountant, and I said, Alan, you're a Christian, aren't you? And he said, yes. Are you? Surprise, surprise. And I said, yes, I am. And he said, what sort of Christian are you like? And I said, I don't know, I'm a Christian that other Christians don't like. He said, that's ridiculous. I said, well, they don't like me at the Abbey, so we should go to the Abbey. I said, yes. And he said, well, I'm going to a dinner in the hotel in Dunfermline next Wednesday night. If you'd like to come, you can come with me and I'll pay. And I thought, an accountant paying for my dinner, I'm going. And he said, you'll have to listen to a man who's going to give a testimony. He's a coal miner. And I went to this meeting. It was a full gospel business, Fellowship International in those days. You said it all. And it was wonderful. These men were wonderful. They were wonderful with each other. There was a peace in this place and a beauty in this place. And they sang a few songs. I didn't like that much. I didn't think that was cool, because I didn't know the songs and that, and I found that quite embarrassing. But everything else was brilliant. This little speaker, Glaswegia hardly understood a word he said, but I knew he was saying the same story as mine, but different, if you know what I mean. But it had all the same connections, and I knew it was important. Now I'm going to run quite quickly forward, because sometime after that, I was asked to go to Belfast. My cousin's husband was there, Dr. Ed, whom some of you know, was the chapter president there of the FGB. And I went, spoke to him on the phone, and he said, when did you become a Christian? I told him, and he's a very methodical man. When he went to my cousin, Caroline, his wife, and he said, look at the prayer diary, and when were the children and I praying for your family in Scotland? And it was during the week I had come to know the Lord. Wow. So I now knew the one question I had: why did the Lord show himself to me then? Yes. I had no idea. And it worried me that I didn't know. Now I knew. And he said, right, there's a man called Parmesan Teeps. I said, I met him. He's been at our chapter. I said, sadly, I've given him a nickname, which I think is, he said, people phoned me, I'm the connection for him. Nobody knew where he was, but I knew him. And they said, they used to phone me up and give me up his name. Oh dear. I said, oh, just call him Teeps and I'll know who you're talking about. And so that's what we did. And this guy, Teeps, he and I hit it off like that. He's a young man compared with me, and then he looked very young for his age. He's sort of a wee laddie to me, but there you go. And he doesn't sound like a wee laddie, does he? He just impressed me, and I loved him dearly, and I found he reciprocated that, and I mean this in the nicest terms. He was invited to go and speak to all the chapters in Ireland, and my cousin wanted me to go, because I'd lived in her house for a while, and she thought I was wonderful. I don't know why, but she did. I was a bit older than him. And she was desperate for me to go, and I couldn't go because I had no money, I had no car, I had nothing by this time. I'd lost my house. And Edward said to me, oh, Finlay, I'm not asking you to come in your own strength. If you knew Dr. Ed, he speaks like a minister, you don't have to come in your own strength, Finlay. He said, don't forget that Peter walked in the water. And I thought, shows what he knows. It was Jesus that walked in the water. He doesn't even know that. Wow, I know this stuff. 2 days later, I got a phone call from this character here. And he says, Finlay, you'll have to tell me what's happening. If I'm going, if you're coming with me, we can stay at Edward and Caroline's the whole week. And we've both got a room there. And he said, I'll not have to bother doing anything. And I said, I can't do that. I've no money, I've no car, my wife will have a fit because there's people coming to look at the house. And he said, but I'm not asking you to go in your own strength. Think about Peter walking on the water. If he took his eyes off Jesus, he sank. I'm thinking to myself, who's wrong? Was it only Jesus that walked in the water, or did Peter also walk in the water? So that convinced me, and I'm looking up saying, Father, I'm going, but I don't know how the rest's going to work. And I was helping a friend, Christian friends, who had a pallet business, and they were trying to sell beam integrated vacuum systems. And they asked me, because my business was just in abeyance, it just had stopped. And I had nothing to do. I went to see if I could get money from the government, but they said no, because my wife was in first-class employment. I got nothing. I said, why didn't you tell me that when we're both paying tax and insurance? They said, it's to do with her income. So I got nothing from that. So I was helping these guys selling. And one of them, Alan, was in the FGB. He was that accountant who took me to the first FGB dinner. And he said to me, Finlay, we know about this. Have our car and take Parmesan Teeps in the car. I said, okay. My wife came home from her work. She worked for ExxonMobil, and there were a lot of Americans in the place she worked, and they had a sort of little travel agents opened a little office there because it was a lot of business. And she came home to me with the Belfast Ferry booklet with the prices and that. I thought, she wouldn't mind me going. She had an ulterior motive I didn't know at that time. And I looked at this thing and I thought, £76, that's funny. I have a cheque for that somewhere. The last FG dinner I was at, and I was Secretary Treasurer, we had a formula for working out money for the speaker. And I worked it out because I was the man. I made out a cheque and I signed it. And I went to Bruce, who was the president, and I countersigned it, Bruce, and he did. And I put it in an envelope and I said, give it to the man. He said, no, Finlay, this lady needs counselling. You give it to the man. So I gave it to him. And he did something nobody else did. He turned away from it and he opened it. And he stopped and he turned back and he looked straight at me and he said, Finlay, yes. And I said, yes. He said, the Holy Spirit showed me I have to give you this. He said, and you've not to put it into the funds. Put it in your own account. And I thought, there's £36,000 deficit in my account, it will just vanish. So I put it in that drawer thinking that it won't come out of our funds from our group because I'll never use it. So I looked at it and it was exactly the same sum of money within a couple of pounds I needed to go with the car and this man, to Ireland. And I told my wife and she said, look, I've got a wee account somewhere. She said, you endorse it my name in the back, but I don't know if you can still do that, but you could in those days. And you endorsed the back of the cheque and signed it. And I gave it to her, and then she came and gave me the money, and we went off to Ireland. I knew why the Lord wanted him and I to go to Ireland together, because I had to learn from him. Because I didn't know the spiritual side. I saw miracles every day for a week. So don't ever be confused with this, lots of miracles, because it happens. I saw miracles that he didn't even know had happened. I'll give you two examples. I'm going to get them up in a minute. I'm anxious about the time. I was going to go to Jackson's Hotel, which was in the south, which is actually west of Belfast, but we're talking about Ireland here. And so I'm heading off up the North Road first, and then I'm going west, and I'm heading for Jackson's Hotel. And Edward said to me, Dr. Ed said, whatever you do, don't forget to take ID. It'll be British Army that stop you at the checkpoint. It's not funny, Finlay, don't make jokes with them. Don't sneeze or anything, because people jump at the... And I said, well, all right. He said, now, I'm serious, it's not funny, because I had a reputation, you see. I said, okay. And we came to this sign, police checkpoint, 2 miles. Oh, guess what? I do have my ID card, but it's back in the room. So I said to Teeps, do you have any ID? He said, well, I've got a California driving license. He said, but it was taken with a flash, and I look like a white man on it. It doesn't even look like me. I thought, oh, very good, thank you. So it's all his fault. I was the guy that forgot the ID. But when we came to this place, I said, I saw this man come with a sergeant with his gun, you know. And I'm looking like, nothing to do with me. I'm just a driver. Go that side. If you don't shoot him, you shoot him. He's a foreigner. So he went round the car to Teeps, and Teeps got the window down, and he said to Teeps, what's the purpose of your visit in the south? Because Teeps said, we're Christians, we're going to speak at a Christian meeting at a hotel called Jackson's Hotel. He said, we represent Full Gospel Business Fellowship and International. He said, and here's some books here. How many men have you got? He said, I can't tell you how many men I've got. Teeps has got my voice magazines out the car. This guy's got a bundle of voice magazines and a gun. I said, just go on. And we're the only known people who ever went through that barrier without having any ID. And he didn't think anything about it. He didn't. And 2 or 3 miles up the road, I'm still sweating over this, and the rain's chucking it down, and I said, I think we're lost. He said, well, you give me peace. I've got a big meeting coming up. I'm told there's 100 people there, so just let me concentrate. I'm all right. I still think I'm lost. He said, Edward told you, if you go on the road, past the policeman, it's on that, past the army, it's on that road, so you must be on the right road. So I carried on. And sure enough, just in this big tree, there's a sign, Jackson's Hotel, 3 miles. Just a handwritten thing. I said, did you see that? Jackson's Hotel, 3 miles, like a funny little handwritten sign. He said, I didn't see it. He said, but it might not be there tomorrow. So I'm driving on trying to work this out. When I got there, I couldn't wait for the next morning to go back and see. Of course, he was aware, and he said to me, well, was it there? Here's me driving, you know. And I said, yes, it was. He said, I thought it might be. But you see, he wouldn't have given a second thought if it hadn't been there. So these are miracles. I was despair of people. I met a man coming out of the church one day who said to me, are you sure about this God thing? And I said, yes. Because God's there all the time. He's in your midst. And if you want God and you look for God, you'll get him. And you'll find him. And if you don't, and somebody else prays about it, he'll still find you. I said, so don't give me that. Anyway, I thought God put me with Teeps for this special reason. And I saw a week of miracles. We then subsequently went back to Ireland on more than one occasion and worked together a lot. And in Ireland, they say, when Teeps and I worked together with the body ministry, there was an extra dimension to it. And I saw things, I went to a place with Teeps, a church, and when we got there, the minister said to Teeps, we don't want him, it's me. And I can understand that. And Teeps said, but why not? He says, I'm going to be teaching my elders how to do healing next week. And I don't know, and I want to do it with you. So Teeps said, okay. So Teeps spoke to me, and Teeps said, sit where I can see you. If anything happens that I want back up, he said, I'll look at you and be praying. And suddenly Teeps was looking at me and he was praying for this young boy. And I didn't know at the time, the young boy was deaf. Teeps prayed, and then suddenly he could hear, so that was cool. So Teeps came to me and he was very angry. He says, I'm fed up with that minister. He keeps going back asking if he can still hear. He was going to be teaching on healing. Now, I just know that was another miracle. It was very nearly given away by a minister. And in my own ministry, I went to Peter's parish over there. What's it called? Where is Peter? Big Peter. Where's it? Northwich, yeah. I went to Northwich. And I was praying, and this man came up for prayer. And he said to me, I said, what do you want? He said, cancer, I've got prostate cancer. And I burst out laughing. He was there to hear me. And he shot up beside me and said, what are you laughing at? I said, well, I've got rid of that. Come on. I said, this is no sweat. So, by Jesus' stripes, I said, the guy, you're healed. And Teeps is agreeing with this and praying in tongues. And Teeps was, like happened here, they asked Teeps to come the next month. And when Teeps went, the man came and said, for the first time in years, he hadn't had any pain. And Teeps told me, and subsequently, that this guy spoke at his own chapter's Christmas dinner to speak to his healing. So what Teeps is saying, it's true, it happens. You know? He has so much, some people misunderstand. Too many miracles. But it's the way he lives, it's what happens in his life. So I'm going to ask him to come up here for 10 minutes. Have we still got time? 10 minutes yet, Dave?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask him in a minute to come up here because I had one thing that always bothers me, that sometimes I don't trust myself. And I was asked by my African friends, this chapter in Glasgow, the only chapter that existed in Scotland really, was full of Nigerians and a couple of others, but mostly Nigerians. And they phoned me up one day and they said, you're our regional director now. I said, yes. They said, well, we want you to go and pray for a man in Johnson's, not far from them. I'm thinking, this poor old man's got to drive all the way to Glasgow, an hour and a quarter, to pray for a guy, and they just live around the corner. And I was feeling pretty sad about that. I thought, well, that's not very fair. And it was a poor little wet day. Ireland's very like Scotland. And I'm driving along to see this man thinking, what am I doing here? And I got there. And I found the door. And this woman was coming out as I was going in. And she said, are you here for Jim? And I said, yes. She said, just go in. He's in his chair. So not very polite in some parts of Glasgow. And I went in and I stood and the man was there. And he said, who are you? I said, Pius Ashama asked me to come. Oh, he said, but there's a young American going about in some of the churches in Glasgow just now, you know. He said, and that's who I wanted. I said, a young American evangelist. I'm neither a young American or an evangelist. How about an old Scottish, born-again, spirit-filled Christian, I thought. I couldn't say anything. And he looked at me, he didn't invite me to sit. And I was standing. I've been in the car for an hour and a half anyway. I wasn't too bad about it, but I thought it was very rude. And the Holy Spirit's saying something to me about two women. And I said to him, are there two women live in this house? You're not here for them, he said, you're here for me. I said, shush. Famous Scottish word, shush. My kids had worked for them, didn't work for this guy, he kept going, And the Holy Spirit said, there are two women. He said, they both very much need his support just now. So I said that to him. He said, me now? I said, yes. So I'm looking at him standing. He's sitting looking up at me. And I was feeling quite embarrassed, really. I don't know what to do next. I didn't feel that he wanted a prayer, because I prayed enough at the door before I arrived at the door. And I eventually said to him, what do you want Jesus to do for you? He said, I'm in pain. I've got great pain. He said, different parts of my body. And if he'd said it was moving about his body, I'd have said he had a demon, but it was just pain in different areas from time to time. And I thought, I'm fed up with this. I'm still standing there looking at him. I just wanted to go. And I said, well, by Jesus' pain and by Jesus' stripes, you are healed. And I thought, yes. And I'm looking at him, and he's looking at me, waiting for more. I don't pray long prayers, and he's wanting me to say something wonderful, I guess, about the blood and all this. I said what I wanted to say, and I knew he was healed. And he said, you can get out the way you came in. So I turned to go, and I said, well, thank you very much, and goodbye. Another grunt. And out I went. A year later, Teeps was in Glasgow to speak at an FGB dinner, and I went through to support him, as he all does with me if we're anywhere near. And I went into this place after the meal, I can't remember, or before, but I was milling about, and I saw this man in a wheelchair with a young man pushing him. And I thought, I'm not going to go to him, because the Holy Spirit said, no, don't go to him. But Teeps was speaking to him. And Teeps then came over to me later on. I said, is that guy's name Jim, and does he come from Paisley? He said, yeah, that's right, that's what he said. He said the young man's very good, it's his son-in-law, and he pushes him everywhere. But he's only got days to live, weeks at the most. He's riddled with cancer, every organ of his body, so he could actually go at any time. He said, but he's remarkable. I said, why is he remarkable, Teeps? He said, he has no pain. And it was the same Jim I prayed for the year before, and didn't want to, and wished I hadn't been there, and blamed God for sending me. And I had to come out of that place, sit in my car and weep before God. Because God had done it, and I was angry at him. Because I thought I had done nothing. Well, neither I did, because I never can do anything. But he can do everything. So thank you very much for listening. If it keeps you on the top. We went to Ireland, and we went specially to a place. It was a Dock Cafe in Ireland, and it was a wet, dour sort of morning, and we went with not great expectations, but this cafe was, what do they call it, an honesty cafe, wasn't it?
Dock Cafe.
The Dock Cafe, an honesty cafe, and it was on the telly on some religious programme, because it had been opened by the council. They put some money into it. You didn't have to pay for your food, but you could pay whatever you liked, and they'd never had to be refunded in 3 years. Harry, who invited us, who ran the outfit in Belfast, he said he'd gone there to be a washer-up and found that they closed it early, so he asked them if you could have meetings there later, and they allowed it. And it became a sort of FG meeting place for younger people. So Teeps and I were there, no great high expectations. I've never seen God at work putting people in the right place at the right time like this ever in my life before. So there was 4 stories to tell. You tell the 2 about the coloured people.
There was one guy, Japanese, and married an American girl. They went to Bible college across the nation where I was. And then they came to to Belfast. They wanted to train how to pray for sick people. They don't know how to do it. When I said I was at Crash Foundation, like, Crash Foundation, same Bible college. And I was shocked. So I prayed for them. I said, when you go back to Japan, if you need my help, I'd be very happy to help them. And then the lady came, says to me, I was a Hindu. And I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ, but my family is not a Hindu. I said, I'll pray that when you go home, pray for your family, because you and your family shall be saved. And I believe that place was a divine appointment.
Right, now there's 2 divine appointments. You're talking in Belfast, Japanese, a Hindu who were there remarkably on that day. I sometimes speak about having been sexually abused by policemen. When I do, I don't always, Holy Spirit shows me to say that. When I do, someone always responds. And in this case, a man came to me. This is not in chronological order, but you'll know why in a minute. He came to me and he said, I've got 5 brothers and there were 6 of us and I'm the oldest one, he said, and we did terrible things in our beds and that when we were little, and he told me graphically what he meant. He didn't really need to, I sort of understood it. And I said, so what's the problem? He says, I was the oldest one, it's my fault, and I don't have a great relationship with my brothers because I believe they blame me for it. So I said, well, calm down. I asked, I prayed and asked the Holy Spirit, what is this? And I was told, it's not anything to do with him. Nobody else of his brothers even remembers this. It was child stuff. Some of them actually think they were responsible for it, but nobody blames him. And he's killing himself with this. So tell him. And by this time he's weeping, and I said, these are good tears now, he said. And sure enough, he said, I feel great. I get it. I'm released from that. I said, yes, you are. Wonderful, he said. Now, there was a lady came in, and I've used the word doer, I don't know if you know it, but this girl had a doer expression. In fact, she looked quite aggressive, really. And she came straight over to him and right in his face, and there's anything, and the teacher said, what can I do for you? And she said, I've got pain, she says, and it starts here, and something's there, and it's down my ankles, and it's the back of my neck, and it's all. So I looked at him, he looked at me, and we said, yeah, she's got a problem with a demon. So I'm standing there trying to mind my own business, really waiting for Teach to do something. And next time I looked at, he got hold of both her hands, like this, like pushing a pram, you know. And I thought, what's he doing? And I looked for him, and she was trying to kick him. And the Holy Spirit said to me, grab her shoulders now. And so I grabbed her shoulders. That was a wrong move because she started trying to kick me. She's kicking him at the front of me. And she started to make noises. And of course, we were trying to move her away so she wasn't in the midst of this, to make a spectacle of her. And Teeps is getting the worst of this because she could kick further that way than that way. I'm happy about that. And I'm holding her, and Teeps is praying in tongues loudly, and I'm praying in English, but in support of him, loudly, so that these people she wouldn't be a peep show, you know. And Teeps is saying, move her. So we're moving her into a corner, and suddenly she just collapsed like that. And sadly for this old man, he let go of her hands. And I'm holding her like this, holding her up. And I was squeezing her. She must have been bruised when she got home. And I'm looking for what to do with her. And there was an easy chair, so I dropped her in the easy chair. And she went,
that's dead.
And you were smiling, pal. I know who thought she was dead. I know the one who thought she was dead. And of course, but this, at the midst of this, the Japanese ones came to him, and this man had come to me. So we couldn't do anything with her. But we were doing this tic-tac across the room. He's speaking to Japan. And then suddenly, she stood up. And she was drop-dead gorgeous young woman, beautiful face, beautiful young woman. And she got a great big smile. She smiled around the whole room and walked straight out the door. And nobody knew who she was. Now these are divine appointments. What I mean by that is, who but God could have done that in Belfast? And tell me this, what were Japanese people going from America to Japan doing in Belfast? It didn't make sense. These were divine appointments. And he's seen a lot more than me maybe, and I've seen plenty. And if for anything like it that day, and if you're wanting him for next month, you better give him a date soon because they want us back in Dot Cafe next month. Now it's sort of all open again. So you have to sort it with Teach, give him a date so I can work us going another time. I will thank you for your patience. I know I'm nothing like as exciting as he is, but bless him and bless you all. Yeah. And if you would maybe could have a time of ministry now, if that's okay, is that okay?
If anybody wants to pray, I would be happy to pray for you.
Yeah, and well, I'm aware I get this stuff always about family, and I think it's here again. There's not many people, but I think someone here has an issue where somebody's got to say sorry. Now, I don't expect you to come forward and talk about it, but do it, because your rewards will be amazing. Whoever you are, do it. And that's all I've got.
Okay. God bless you.
And the lady wants prayer for her.